And we're live. Okay, we're live. Fuck it, we'll do it live. We'll do it. Fuck it, I'll do it live. I wonder how many times I've started an episode like that. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, Christopher.
How are you?
I'm good, yeah. Just having a nice cup of tea.
We want to talk about some dark men. Some
nice.
dark evil lords.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. I do apologise in advance if there is any audio issues. Something's going wrong. Somewhere.
And Chris is going to have a heart attack if he keeps looking, so just ignore it. No one mention it.
There's just... something's wrong with my headphones, which I've not had that long. And I think it's causing a little whiny bitch feedback into the microphones.
What's the dog chewing? A bottle?
Oh, for fuck's sake, this dog.
It doesn't matter, but obviously that might be in the background.
It's a Dairy Lee Dunker I had.
Okay.
It was one of the, the garlic tubes. It's the good ones. Right, okay, cool. Welcome back, Becca. I thought it'd been more than one episode that you weren't here, but I made your excuses last week. Last time I...
what did you tell everyone?
Just the truth, that you were putting our kid to bed, and then you just were too tired because she took so long to go to bed. It's just one of those things. Today, so go back and listen to that. It's the beginning of where we talk about Sauron in general, talk about what his names mean. Often they come back to like cruel, or the abhorred, or smells bad. One of them is it's like a foul smell, like sulfur kind of thing, like a demon. So today, now what we're going to cover today is what makes Sauron. The qualities and some of the. So we're not just going to talk about events. Today we're going to talk about the conceptual nature of his characteristics, like him being a manipulator and what his view of what he does is, because surprisingly no one really thinks himself evil. No. And Sauron,
he's just going about his everyday.
He's utterly convinced that what he's doing is right for everyone, and there's a lot we'll go into about it. It's fucking crazy. Sorry, I'm coming over a cold.
The T to the R to the U to the M to the P. He thinks he's doing everything right.
Oh, Christ. No, fuck no. Let's not. There's a lot of Americans who listen to this, so wherever you fall on the divide.
He might be, he might not. Let's see.
No,
it doesn't affect us, so...
Well, it does.
Well, it does.
It affects everyone.
But,
I was saying...
We're not as close to the bomb site, so...
Well, I was saying to one of my...
the nuclear core.
I was saying to someone in the Discord last night that the world used to kind of like point and laugh at America, but now the rest of the world's on fire as well, so none of us have really got a leg to stand on.
Nah, just have to go with it.
Like, everyone's a cunt.
Take every day as it comes.
Yeah, because you're not fucking
cross that bridge when it comes to it.
You're not promised tomorrow. Definitely, you're not promised tomorrow. Speaking of which, well, no, not really. So, I'm a little bit foggy brained today, because last night I had a lovely time with some of the people in the Discord.
I didn't realise I was meant to be joining. So
you were told multiple fucking times that you were invited and that you should come along. I came out after the call.
Child to bed.
Yeah, I came out after the call, drunk as fuck, and you were just bollock naked in bed on your laptop booking things for New York. So no, absolutely not. You were asked. But what we did was there was a few of us in the Discord call. It was just a nice chilled hangout. Like Alex was there, Amanda was there. People who listen to the podcast who've been friends with us for a while. And what we did was we had a fun little game of I put on a Kahoot version of Smash or Pass.
Nice.
And I just but I fucked it up and I gave them 4 options and I didn't realise you meant to pick like a right up. What I should have done was each individual person would have been true or false, Smash or Pass.
Yeah.
Like a fucking fool, I completely messed it up. But
so they all just voted for their favourite one.
Yeah, and then we talked about it. It was funny because like one of them, one of our friends, everyone who joins the podcast, everyone who joins the Discord are just you're just my friend, and she started by saying, "Oh, Chris, like you're corrupting me by like having to do these games and stuff like that." And she was the dirtiest. Anyway, yeah. So we played Kahoot, had some drinks. I had a fair amount of whiskey. I was quite drunk last night. It was fun. It was really nice just catching up with people. So if you're interested in coming hanging out with us, come and join the Discord. We did have there's a couple of people who joined the last few days who've listened to the podcast for a while, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't realise you had a Discord," so they've come along and just slotted right in. It's been very nice. So, right, shall we talk about what makes a Dark Lord a Dark Lord?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So, the first thing I dug up was, do you know we've said before that Tolkien doesn't like allegory?
Yes.
And he's and in the foreword to Lord of the Rings, he said, like, if I was in an allegory and the Lord of the Rings was meant to represent World War II, then Sauron would have been enslaved and the ring would have been destroyed, right?
Yeah.
Ring would have been seized and Sauron would have been enslaved, blah, blah, blah. But funnily enough, it's not quite I don't know if it is allegory or not, but in 1944, Tolkien wrote a letter to Christopher, his son, who was in the Air Force at the time and he was away on base. And in this letter, he likens Hitler, or maybe like more generally the Axis powers, to Sauron with the ring. So like I'll read the quote. So it's from a letter to Christopher Tolkien, 6th of May, 1944. And he's talking about like the big organisers of like war and movements and stuff like that. And he said in this paragraph, he says, "An ultimately evil job, for we are attempting to conquer Sauron with the ring, and we shall, it seems, succeed, but the penalty is, as you all know, to breed new Saurons and slowly turn men and elves into orcs." So like I saw that was just something like, you know, bad shit happens at war, which breeds like new dictators and bad feelings and stuff like that. And I just thought it was absolutely fascinating that he would say that you're fighting Sauron with the ring.
Yeah.
Just like, oh shit, and turns men and elves into orcs, which is like, you know, like war kind of leaves an impact on you. That being said,
I feel like the ice cream man is a Dark Lord, because just as you were saying that, I heard the ice cream man, and it's the middle of November. He's trying to turn all these children to his dark ways.
What the fuck is wrong with you? Jesus. But I mean, I have put a note here that it's probably not something I'd look too far into, because ultimately it's a father trying to like comfort his son who's away at war. And I think maybe first and foremost he's
by likening Hitler to Sauron.
Well, he's saying that like you're in like a great story. Do you know, like how Sam says to Frodo when they're going through Mordor, he's like, we're in one of the great stories, and that great stories never end. Like I think I took it as he's trying to comfort his son by saying like you're on the side of good, fighting. You know, you're in one of the stories.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But yeah, I'm not going to look any deeper than that. But I just thought it was very interesting.
But like you say, if you are Sauron, you think you are the good side.
Yeah, that's true. Sauron does think.
Hitler, he thought he was right.
Everyone thinks that like what they're doing is right, isn't it? Like you'll always find a way to justify things to yourself, or if you don't, like there's that thing that have you heard of the narcissist prayer?
Yes.
Nobody thinks himself evil is one of the things that we know with Sauron. And I asked if you knew the narcissist prayer. And the narcissist prayer is one. I think it's a really quick way for people to like to have people understand how bad people or people doing bad things rationalize it to themselves. So the narcissist prayer, for anyone who's not familiar with it, and I know a couple of you might be, and you might be because like you were in a horrible relationship. So you know, just remember it's quite a light-hearted it's a light-hearted podcast, so don't worry too much. That didn't happen, and if it did, it wasn't that bad. And if it was, that's not a big deal. And if it is, that's not my fault. And if it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, you deserved it. Shorthand, that's a very quick way to see how people justify things to themselves.
I work on one.
Do you? Oh yeah, he's a dick. Yeah, you do. Yeah. Okay, right. Yeah, I think we all know a narcissist. There's like this whole Reddit community called like Raised by Narcissists, and yeah, there is, and it's quite interesting.
I think I've got a high tolerance to them.
Yeah. I don't know, like, I didn't have the greatest childhood, so I tend not to look too closely at it, because I'm like, I don't want to go down that road. Anyway, right, Sauron is a bastard. doesn't consider himself a bastard. Tolkien likened the Axis powers, or maybe Hitler specifically, to that bastard. So that's where we're going, right? So then, we're going to talk about, in the big letter, which is letter 131, which is at the beginning of the published Silmarillion and is in, obviously, the letters books, Tolkien summarises Sauron in the First Age and Second Age, and it's pretty succinct, like the summary of stuff, and it does give us some indication of how his motives began versus what they ended up as. And so the quote from the letter is, First Age Sauron was a being of Valinor perverted to the service of the enemy and becoming his chief captain and servant. He repents in fear when the first enemy is utterly defeated, but in the end does not do as commanded, which is to return to the judgment of the gods. He lingers in Middle-earth, very slowly, beginning with fair motives, the reorganizing and rehabilitation of the ruin of Middle-earth, quote-unquote, neglected by the gods. He becomes a reincarnation of evil, and a thing lusting for complete power, and so consumed ever more fiercely with hate, especially of gods and elves, little g gods. All through the twilight of the Second Age, the shadow is growing in the east of Middle-earth, spreading its sway more and more over men, who multiply as the elves begin to fade. The three main themes are thus: the delaying of elves that lingered in Middle-earth, Sauron's growth to a new Dark Lord, Master and God of Men, and Numenor Atlantis. So that's it. It's like he says at the end of he feigned obeisance at the end of the First Age, right? He says to Eonwë, "I'm sorry, can you forgive me?" Eonwë, who is like one of the more powerful Maiar, says, "I can't do that, bro. You need to go back and talk to Manwë. Only they can judge you." He says, "Fuck that," and disappears, right? And at first, and then he starts to think that it's been abandoned, that Middle-earth's been abandoned by the gods. So Tolkien mentions that Sauron's pride caused him to ultimately relapse, right? From his chance of redemption that he gets at the end of the First Age, but we'll discuss that in due time, right? But Tolkien seems to suggest that there may be a fair argument to be made as to whether you'd consider the elves evil for helping forge the Rings of Power, because Sauron taught them how to do it, and then they're ultimately used for evil. Now, Tolkien then, so in letter 153, Tolkien says, Sauron was, of course, not evil in origin. He was a spirit corrupted by the Prime Dark Lord, the Prime Subcreative Rebel, Morgoth. He was given an opportunity of repentance when Morgoth was overcome, but could not face the humiliation of recantation and suing for pardon. And so his temporary turn to good and benevolence ended in a greater relapse, until he became the main representative of evil of later ages. But at the beginning of the Second Age, he was still beautiful to look at and could assume a beautiful visible shape, and was not wholly evil, not unless all reformers who want to hurry up with reconstruction and reorganization are wholly evil, even before pride and the lust to exert their will eat them up. And there's a quote later on where Tolkien says, there's a question about whether you'd consider the elves evil who helped him, the Gwaithir Myrdain, the elves. And he says, you wouldn't consider them any more evil than someone who works in like an arms factory, even though what they're building...
Or Hitler's Youth.
Yeah, even though what they're building goes on to hurt people. And even if they know about that, he doesn't think they can still be considered evil. That's quite a tricky moral quandary.
But they can do other things. It's not as if the only skill they have is to forge rings, is to make arms. There's other avenues for these people.
Well, what about wartime? So like wartime Germany, for example.
Well, no, you didn't really have any other option. But the dwarves don't have to forge these rings, do they?
Well, no, the elves, not the dwarves.
The elves, sorry. Jeez.
Yeah, but the Gwaithir Myrdain are the chief jewelsmiths of like Eregion and stuff like that. So who knows? But it's interesting because he also says like even the people who own the factory might not be considered evil, which I don't think I agree with Tolkien there.
No.
Like in this hypothetical situation, I don't think I agree. But he was talking about. But basically, we're talking about Sauron's pride, that he doesn't want to face the humiliation. He tries to be good by himself, tries to help heal. Ultimately, it slowly slips back until he becomes the utter reincarnation of evil, because his way is the best way, and he'd never consider anyone else's approach.
Yeah.
To the utter detriment of the entirety of Middle-earth, essentially. So, we're going to, like I said, we're looking at Sauron more generally, like characterization, these terms. Like, there's a fair bit about him that's like solely, that's not about the events of the stories. And one of these things that's quite a big chunky, a chunky kind of section is his power compared to Morgoth. So we know briefly, right? We've covered Morgoth in earlier episodes, particularly the first kind of set of podcast episodes that are in the listening order. Not necessarily the first ones we recorded, but the first ones that are in the listening order if you go right back down the line. But basically, Morgoth, the devil himself, one of the Valar, one of the great spirits created by God. So he is Lucifer of this Middle-earth. He expended most of his power to pass himself into the actual essence of the world. So the world is now stained with the taint of Morgoth. Like original sin kind of thing, right? That's Morgoth for anyone who's not. And he was defeated at the end of the first age. What are you laughing at? Is it something childish? It's something childish, isn't it?
The word taint, sorry.
Taint. I thought, yeah. I saw your face in my taint.
It's because you're really distracting us and you're causing the vibes to be off with pressing your buttons. It's driving me nuts, and then I'm trying to concentrate, and then you've got to use the word taint.
Morgoth perineumed the world.
You're just too serious.
Morgoth episiotomied the worlds. Oh, that's a word I wish I didn't know as a parent. Any non-parents out there, I dare you to Google episiotomy.
I haven't had one.
Me neither.
So
if I wipe too hard, though, sometimes it feels like I've had one.
Oh, Jesus.
My taint, it's just the integrity of my taint as I get older is weakening. Is that a thing? Does your taint get weaker as you get older? Because I was listening to a podcast, last podcast on the left at some point, right? And they were saying that now because they're in their 40s, they can't put stuff up their ass as much. Because like you're just getting weaker.
What were they putting up their ass before?
I don't know. Imagine they were like getting pegged or fingered or something. I don't
God.
know. We listen to those people. I love that podcast.
Anyway, so Sauron is just jumped on the back of the taint of Morgoth. Kind of. He's riding the Morgoth taint.
Well, this is where we're going to see that. This is why Sauron was perhaps more effective. Because Morgoth expended the majority of his power disseminating it into the world. So, like I've said before, that Arda was Morgoth.
Sauron holds on to it.
Yeah, so like Tolkien himself said that Arda, i.e. the planet itself, is Morgoth's ring. That and Sauron made the rings of power. I'm not even pausing. I can see you laughing just because I said Morgoth's ring. You're fucking childish. Sort yourself out. Right, so let's talk about Sauron's power, how it's different to Morgoth's. So in the Valaquenta, Sauron gets a mention in the last paragraph, and it gives a good summary of him that I'll talk about before we move on to that. So, among those of his servants that have names of the greatest was that spirit whom the Eldar called Sauron, or Gorthau the Cruel. In his beginning he was of the Maiar of Aule, and he remained mighty in the lore of that people. In all the deeds of Melkor, the Morgoth, upon Arda, in his vast works and the deceits of his cunning, Sauron had a part, and was only less evil than his master, in that for long he served another and not himself. But in after years, he rose like a shadow of Morgoth and a ghost of his malice, and walked behind him on the same ruinous path down into the void. So, that's from the published Silmarillion. There are other books we're going to talk about today, and unpublished manuscripts, like earlier versions of stuff there, where we take our knowledge and inspiration of Sauron, and I'll try and call them out as we go. So this next bit is from Volume 10 of the History of Middle-earth, which is called Morgoth's Ring, and there is a part of the book called Myths Transformed, I think it is, where it highlights the differences between Morgoth and Sauron. And it starts by saying that Sauron was greater in the Second Age than Morgoth was at the end of the First Age. And that was because, even though he was smaller in like natural stature and power, he hadn't quote-unquote fallen as low as Morgoth did. So this means that Morgoth had spent the majority of his power on corrupting the world itself and staining everything that there was and came in. That everything that was there and everything that would come after was tainted by Morgoth. And he spent the majority of his power doing that. And Ardamard is a term that we've used before. Ardamard means like the worlds with the stink of evil, the touch of evil on it, right? So for more information on that, go back and listen to our earlier episodes. So, what does this mean for Sauron? This means that Sauron inherited a world from Morgoth that was already tainted, right? That means he didn't have to spend his power on anything really, except the rings, because he wasn't concerned with the planet itself. He wasn't concerned about creation itself. He just wanted to dominate the minds and the wills of the creatures on Earth, on Arda. So he didn't want to pass himself into everything like Morgoth did. He didn't want to become a part of nature, a part of the natural order. It's just the creatures is what he wants. So first of all, there straight away, he has a lot less. He has a much narrower scope cosmologically.
Not as hard a job to do.
Yeah, exactly. So he has to expend less of his power, which means most of his power goes into the rings of power. Fucking hell, how many times am I saying power? Most of his energy goes into the rings. Sauron also had more knowledge about the detail of the world because he had more knowledge of the music. So do you know the Ainu Lindale? So the music at the beginning of creation is how Middle-earth was made. Again, go back and listen to the Ainu Lindale episodes, number 1. Morgoth this never occurred to me until I read this. Morgoth barely knew what was going on in creation because he wasn't listening to the music at all. He was trying to do his own stuff. So do you know when he was
clapping his drums and his pans together?
Yeah, exactly. So do you know when he was he's arguing with and fighting with Eru back and forth? That means he has no knowledge really of what's going on in the world because he just wasn't listening. Whereas Sauron, because at the beginning he was with Aule, he knew far more of the music. So Morgoth only gave a fuck about causing chaos and discord, right? And Morgoth's mind was full of his own plans, and he gave very little attention to small things. And what kind of tripped me out when I read this is that he was a big picture guy, but anything that was brought to his attention, like the existence of other inhabitants of Arda, like the elves and the humans, that just enraged the fact the fact of that itself enraged him, and he just wanted their destruction. Tolkien says that Morgoth was far more interested in and concerned with a volcanic eruption than, say, a tree. And he might not have even known about things like flowers, for example, because all he cared about was fucking up the planet. So, he might not have even known, there were some creations of Yavanna. If anybody had pointed out an animal to him, he might not have had any knowledge of it because he's so concerned with fucking up the planet in its entirety. And that is what a fucking moron. Just Jesus.
He's just not sweating the small stuff.
Well, so Tolkien says about Morgoth that he was the ultimate nihilist. And what this means is that, and it was true nihilism, which means that even in the end, the madness of Morgoth's nihilism would have led him to destroy his own creations, the orcs and stuff. And I've got a quote, right? Melkor's final impotence and despair lay in this, that whereas the Valar, and in their degree elves and men, could still love Ardamard, that is Arda with a Melkor ingredient, then could still heal this or that hurt or produce from its very marring things beautiful and lovely, so they could work with what they have. Melkor could do nothing with Arda, which was not from his own mind and was interwoven with the work and thoughts of others. Even left alone, he could have only gone on raging until all was levelled again into a formless chaos. And yet, even so, he would have been defeated, because it still would have existed, independent of his own mind and a world in potential. Now that, I was trying to explain this last night when I was fucking 3 whiskeys deep. I was drunk. 3 glasses of, filled glasses of whiskey deep, and I was trying to explain to people on the call when we were talking about this, that Morgoth, was always going to lose, because even if you destroyed everything, that nothing. So the very concept of
nothing is still something.
It's still something. It's still the potential, and he couldn't destroy that potential. You can never destroy it because something that everything is nothing is still something. Nothing can be still something.
Yeah.
And that he would never have anything left.
He wants to be in a dark room.
Yeah, but he wants to destroy. He wants to destroy the room.
The room he's sitting in,
and he can't destroy the concept of darkness, and that's what you know. And that just kind of blew my mind. Like, that Morgoth would never win. He never could win. Never had a chance, because even though he'd destroy everything in the end, all he'd be left with is knowing that even though he's destroyed everything,
there's still something.
There's still something, yeah. You can't destroy a concept. And it's just, wow. Yeah. So Sauron was not at all like that. So for the same part of this book we read, Sauron had never reached this stage of nihilistic madness. He did not object to the existence of the world, so long as he could do what he liked with it. He still had the relics of positive purposes that descended from the good of the nature in which he began. It had been his virtue, and therefore also the cause of his fall and of his relapse, that he loved order and coordination, and disliked all confusion and wasteful friction. It was the apparent will and power of Melkor to effect his designs quickly and masterfully that had first attracted Sauron to him. Sauron had in fact been very like Saruman, and so still understood him quickly and could guess what he would likely to think and do, even without the aid of the Palantiri or spies. Whereas Gandalf eluded and puzzled him. But like all minds of this cast, Sauron's love, originally or later, Sauron's love, mere understanding of other individual intelligences was correspondingly weaker. And though the only real good in, or rational motive for, all this ordering and planning and organisation was the good of all inhabitants of Arda, even admitting Sauron's reason he himself came to fear death, the destruction of his human bodily form above everything, and sought to avoid any kind of injury to his own form, was the right to be their supreme lord. His plans, the idea of coming to his own isolated mind, became the sole object of his will, and an end into itself. So, to put it simply...
Nora, that was like an A-level English class.
To put it very, very simply, right, I'm going to sum it up. This is a classic Chris sum up. Saruman he could understand, because Saruman wanted to dominate, and Saruman wanted to order things. Gandalf he couldn't understand, because Gandalf just wanted to preserve and nurture things. Sauron meant that he could, because he was so alike to Saruman, he understood how they think. They were both students of Aule. He could easily control and manipulate him, even without the Palantir.
Yeah.
Gandalf couldn't do that too. It scared him. He didn't understand. Now, what he wanted to do is that he wanted to preserve, he wanted to order the world the way that he thought it should be. That's the main part of that. He disliked confusion, wastefulness, and that's what originally drew him to Melkor, is that Melkor could get a plan and get it done quickly. There was no muss, no fuss, right?
I get that. I understand.
To put it even more simply, to sum all this up, Morgoth wanted to destroy the house. He wanted to burn it all down. Sauron wanted to Marie Kondo it, and he wanted to organise it until everything in it sparked joy.
Yeah.
That's the difference between Morgoth and Sauron. Morgoth wanted to burn the house down. Sauron wanted to sort through all of his belongings.
I think I'm Sauron.
I think you are Sauron. As we were going through that, I thought. But I said this, and this annoyed Amanda, but I still think I'm right. Sauron is a project manager taken to their natural conclusion. That's what Sauron is. All project managers are just Sauron. So, don't trust your project managers, kids. Don't trust a project manager. They're all just Sauron waiting to be born.
I feel personally attacked.
You're not a project manager.
I'm not, but I've just said that I understand Sauron. So.
Oh no, I've had this as well. I've had my moment where I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I think I really vibe with this guy. He does. So Tolkien does go on to say that Morgoth hated Eru. He hated God, right? And Sauron inherited some of this hatred, but he couldn't be a sincere atheist because he knows God personally. However, funnily enough though, wait for this, Sauron preached atheism to everybody. because it furthered his own goals.
Yeah.
And it weakens resistance to himself, because like if there's no gods, then the most powerful person is probably him. And the idea of retribution from God for doing heinous shit is like is minimal. So like he was able to convince like the Númenóreans that Eru and the Valar and what have you had just abandoned the world. So
you do more. You
do what you want.
Potentially do more bad because you think, well, there's no repercussions, is there?
Exactly. So instead of going full like Fedora atheist to himself, he instead does something else. He couldn't be a sincere atheist, given that he knows God personally. So what he did, he deludes himself. And what he does is he deludes himself into thinking that Eru had abandoned, if not the universe, i.e. Ea, then at least he'd abandoned Arda, he'd abandoned Earth, because the Valar had failed in, you know, like stopping Morgoth, protecting the elves, blah, blah, blah. So Sauron lies to himself and says, God's abandoned us. I can do what I want. Like, Eru has abandoned the world.
And I mean, at any point does Eru in the early stage actually intervene to stop him believing this?
Eru... Well, it's a tricky
Eru's
question.
just like, I'm busy doing other stuff.
Eru, as a general rule, barely gets involved directly in things. He gets involved with pushing Gollum into the volcano. Like, you know, that might be the one. He intervenes directly and sinks Númenor and removes the continent of Aman from being like physically in the world, so that elves can only get there by the straight road across the sea. Everyone else that's when he makes the world round. He talks to humans when they first wake up, but he tells them you need to figure things out by yourself. This
might be part of Eru's plan.
Yeah, exactly. And that's when they fall to Morgoth, is when God won't answer them, but Morgoth does. So
Eru can't be good if there's no existence of bad.
I have written an article about this, which you have not even read. You've not read. But if anybody's interested, hit me up and I will...
I have read it.
You fucking haven't.
I've read parts.
Fuck off. Hit me up and I will send you the article I wrote for the Amon Hen June edition from this year. I wrote an article about Eru's plan for Arda and why I think that evil is allowed as a necessity so that Eru can have us all fully appreciate when he heals Arda.
So if you care what Chris thinks about that, then give it a read.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty well researched. It took me a couple of months to write it. Like,
I did read parts of it.
Yeah, whatever.
I did.
Whatever. So, he deludes himself into thinking the Valar have failed and wouldn't concern themselves, and that Eru wouldn't concern himself with Arda anymore, so he could do what he liked. He's like, nobody's coming back. I can do whatever. Interestingly enough, the fact that Númenor was sunk to the bottom of the ocean and the continent of Aman was taken away, like I mentioned, just seemed to strengthen this view for some reason. He thought that Eru, at the sinking of Númenor, was Eru coming back just to take the Valar away and say, right, we're ditching this completely. Yeah, like the delusion's strong as fuck, right? But despite the fact that he preached atheism, he also, on the other hand, converted the people of Númenor to worship Morgoth. And I was surprised to find out the reasoning for this, because he didn't stay loyal to Morgoth out of a sense of, like, a sense of loyalty to his old master. It was much better than that. And this is where, like, we get into super duper manipulator, because Tolkien explicitly states why Sauron got the Númenóreans to worship Melkor. And this will come up when we discuss the Second Age again, but I just wanted to read it now. To wean one of the God-fearing from their allegiance, it is best to propound another unseen object of allegiance and another hope of benefits. Propound him to a lord who will sanction what he desires and not forbid it. Sauron, apparently a defeated rival for world power, now a mere hostage, this is talking about when he's in Númenor as a hostage, can hardly propound himself, so he can't big himself up in Númenor. He has to big up someone else. So, as the former servant and disciple of Melkor, the worship of Melkor, Morgoth, will raise him from hostage to high priest. But though Sauron's whole true motive was the destruction of the Númenóreans, this was a particular matter of revenge upon Ar-Pharazôn for humiliation. So Sauron, unlike Morgoth, would have been content for the Númenóreans to exist as his own subjects, and indeed, he used a great many of them that he corrupted to his allegiance. So, I will translate that again and put it very simply. Sauron gets captured by the Númenóreans in the Second Age. They raise a bigger army than anybody's ever seen, and they go to make war on Sauron. All of Sauron's enemies, servants, run away. So Sauron thinks on his feet and instead gives himself over as a hostage to the Númenóreans. But now he's now the man on the inside. So within 3 years, or 5, depending which version you read, he goes from a hostage of Ar-Pharazôn, the king of Númenor, to his most influential advisor. And the way he does this is he can't big himself up. So instead, he says, "Hey, there's this other god. There's this proper god that will let you do whatever you want. Like that will get you your goals. That will make Númenor great again, and stuff like that." And that's how he uses it. So that's the evidence of that manipulation. This is how good he is at it. Is that he turns them to the allegiance of Morgoth or worshiping Morgoth as a way to further his own ends. And it's just fucking diabolical. It's unbelievable. So we'll come again to this when we discuss the Second Age, like the events of the Second Age. But I want to raise a couple more points of him turning things to his own gain. So I want to highlight again Sauron with the Númenóreans, how manipulative he is with them. So he gets people on side very readily. And this passage is taken from the Akalabeth, which is the story of the downfall of Númenor. So pay attention, right, to how sweetly seductive the tone of this is. "Yet such was the cunning of his mind and mouth, and the strength of his hidden will, that ere 3 years had passed he had become closest to the secret counsels of the king. For flattery, sweet as honey, was ever on his tongue, and knowledge he had of many things yet unrevealed to men. And seeing the favour that he had their lord of all the all the counsellors began to fawn upon him, save one alone, Amandiel, lord of Adunier. Then slowly the change came over the land, and the hearts of elf friends were sorely troubled, and many fell away out of fear. And although those that remained still called themselves the faithful, their enemies named them rebels. For now, having the ears of men, Sauron, with many arguments, gainsaid, i.e. contradicted, all that the Valar had taught, and he bade men think that in the world, in the east and even in the west, there lay yet many seas and many lands for their winning, wherein was wealth uncounted. And still if they should come at last to the end of those lands and seas, beyond all lay the ancient darkness. And out of it the world was made. For darkness alone is worshipful, and the Lord thereof may yet make other worlds to be his gifts to those who serve him, and so that increase their power shall find no end. And Ar-Pharazôn said, Who is the Lord of darkness? Then behind locked doors Sauron spoke to the king, and he lied, saying, It is he whose name is not now spoken, for the Valar have deceived you concerning him, putting forward the name of Eru, a phantom devised of the folly of their hearts, seeking to enchain men in servitude to themselves. For they are the oracle of this Eru, which speaks only what they will. But he that is their master shall yet prevail, and he will deliver you from this phantom, and his name is Melkor, Lord of all, giver of freedom, and he shall make you stronger than they. Then Ar-Pharazôn the king turned back to the worship of the dark, and of Melkor the lord thereof, at first in secret, but ere long openly and in the face of his people, and they for the most part followed him. So Sauron, within 3 years, goes from hopelessly outmatched against the biggest army the world had ever seen, to having the king of Númenor eaten out the palm of his hand. And I don't know if you caught that reference there to other worlds and the great outer dark. He's saying, like, you can go and conquer other fucking planets. Like, that's just batshit.
Reminds me of Gladiator 2.
Yeah? Do tell.
Well, no, because I don't want to spoil it for you or anyone else going to see Gladiator 2.
Well, you've got to say it now. What the fuck?
No, just that there's a gladiator owner.
Yeah.
Who starts off as a slave.
Oh, right, yeah.
And ends up...
Is that Denzel Washington?
Is Denzel Washington in it?
I don't know, it might just be another black guy. I'm really racist.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think that's what you're going for. I didn't think
Denzel.
that was. Anyway,
it might be Denzel.
So yeah. But it's a good, easy watch film. Really good.
Yeah, so it's that, like, rags to riches.
Well, no, it's just the rise of how you can rise to power.
Yeah,
with cunning and...
Didn't Rasputin do that as well?
Rasputin.
No. Didn't Rasputin do that in Russia? I'm pretty sure he was like a nobody, and then he
Couldn't be honest, I don't know a lot about Russian history.
Yeah, I think it was to do with like a lot of like Madame Helena Blavatsky and like some like just magic esoteric shit. But anyway, the point being, right? Sauron. Did you get the vibe from that passage that I read? Just how smooth he is.
Yeah.
That how quick and do you know what's that? I think it's The Exorcist.
It's like me.
No, where The Exorcist, where they say like the most dangerous lies are have a bit of truth mixed in with them.
Yeah, because that's it makes it seem it's more factual, isn't it?
Sauron.
So even the person that's spouting it.
Yeah, Sauron just the phrase that comes to mind with Sauron is he falls in shit and comes up smelling of roses.
Smooth criminal.
Yeah,
so it
true.
is.
Yeah. Now
Very clever.
This one, I was bamboozled by reading this. I could not believe that I'd read this. But so we'll stick with the theme of turning things to his own gain, right? Sauron is also said to have encouraged the spread of Westron in Middle-earth during the Second Age. And Westron we know is the common language of Middle-earth. So we know he's credited with the creation of Black Speech, which is the language spoken in Mordor by the servants of Mordor. But even though he wanted everyone in Mordor to speak his language, he fostered and encouraged the spread of Westron within Middle-earth. And the reason for that was a common language across all your domains is easier to control people with. So from volume 12 of the History of Middle-earth, I'll read... The spread of Westron had at first been due largely to the Dunedain themselves, the people of Numenor, for in the dark years they'd often visited again the shores of Middle-earth, and in the days of their great voyages before the downfall, they had made many fortresses and havens for the help of their ships. One of the greatest of these had been at Pelargia above the mouths of Anduin, and it said that the language of the region, which was afterwards called Gondor, was that of the foundation of the common speech. But Sauron, who could turn all things devised by elves or men to his own evil purposes, had also favoured the spread of this common speech, for it was useful to him in governing these vast lordship of the Dark Years. And it's crazy. So, like, when the Númenóreans come back to Middle-earth, like, when Elendil and stuff come back, like, the Númenóreans start visiting Middle-earth, like, they're surprised that they can still communicate with people. And it's mad to think that that's partly because of Sauron. Like, the language was preserved because of him. It's just like...
Makes sense.
It's fucking crazy because like we discussed. I discussed last episode. There's like an little out there story about Sauron being referred to as having kingdoms in the Second Age and stuff. So again, it makes more sense.
I think he sounds like a great guy.
Yeah, he's pretty good. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover today. Like the next stage for me now is the next episode is we're going to start going into like the events
that make him bad.
Well, no, just the events he was involved in. Because I was going to cover Almaren on this episode, which is where he betrays... so Almaren we covered in the Spring of Ardor episode, which is the first version of the world, you know, like when they have the two lamps that light everything.
Yeah.
And they rest, and they have that big party in the middle, and then
Melkor comes and blows them out.
With the lamps and stuff, yeah, like when they partied. But I don't want to get into the actual events. So next episode we'll cover other versions of Sauron, like Thu the Necromancer and Tevildor, Prince of Cats. But I thought that was enough to digest today, just the characteristics of him. Like, what makes a Dark Lord? Can you see like the motivations he had here? Is that he started as wanting to order the world, but because of his own pride and not wanting to face the Valar, he ended up becoming even more evil for it. You can see why he's more powerful than Morgoth.
Also, you're always going to be more powerful if you started from the bottom.
Yeah, like...
Because you know every rung of the ladder, you know everyone.
Yeah.
He'll know a lot of languages, and obviously he's trying to encourage people to speak one, but he'll know how to communicate with every rung of the ladder. So yeah, very intelligent.
Oh, unbelievably so. It's absolutely insane. Like, it's crazy.
And while he's sneaking about in the background, nobody will notice.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, that's it for today. Thank you, Becca. It's nice to have you back. It's been. I hope you've enjoyed it. If there's any technical issues with this episode, I do apologise.
I've loved this episode, apart from the fact I've had to watch you twiddling knobs
It's really
the
fucking.
whole time.
It's really annoying.
Which is really annoying for me.
Oh, is it? Oh, right, is it? Well, I'll tell you what.
To watch you twiddle them.
I'll tell you what, you do the sound engineering, you do the script writing, you do the research, you do the editing, you do the social media, you do the podcast management, you do the follower engagement. All you do, right, you turn up and just digest and comment on things I tell you, yet everybody loves you. Utter bullshit. I'm the sidekick to my own fucking podcast. The first question I get when there's a solo episode is, where's Becca? Is Becca okay? Is Becca coming back?
Well,
So
wow, gee whiz.
I'm sorry, princess.
Gee whiz,
I'm
honestly.
sorry, princess, that things aren't good enough. You fuck.
You wouldn't be alive to do all these things.
Whatever.
Would you?
Whatever. Right.
Christopher.
We're going to go and decide what we want for our tea, I think.
Yeah, honestly, guys, I'm absolutely loving life, if I'm honest. I don't know about Christopher over here, because that seemed like he had a big load to get off his chest there.
It's annoyed me that I'm hearing this crackling in my headphones, and I'm not sure whether it's like the equipment or it's just the headphones. Like, that's what's annoying me. Because if I play it back and it's not there, it's fine.
Yeah.
But if it is there, then I'm going to have to do something about it. So that's annoying. But yeah, anyway.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, fuck me. Right, yes.
Make me another cup of tea, slave.
No. Second episode of Sauron done. This is like what goes into a Dark Lord, what makes him a Dark Lord. Then now we're going to start, again, like I said, we're going to start covering events he's involved in, which will take up the next 3 or 4 episodes, I think. And then we should be done with Sauron. But I'm loving how fascinating he is, and it is really it's really easy to see where he's coming from.
Yeah.
But obviously the execution is not great.
I think he's meant.
Utterly fascinating. But yeah, as usual, come and hang out with me on Instagram. Come and hang out in the Discord. I'm there every day, chatting loads of shit as usual. Let us know any episodes you'd like to see in future. Let me know any comments, queries, suggestions, blah 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 blah. Yeah, is there anything you want to say before we go?
I feel like speechless, if I'm honest.
Fuck off. Whatever. Right.
Princess Peach out.
Yeah, hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, and we will catch you later. Bye.
Bye.